Welcome to the Rotowire DFS podcast, brought to you by FanDuel.com. I'm your host, Josh Hayes, joined as always by Benny Ricciardi. We're talking about the leader in one-day fantasy sports, and we're talking about the Friday NBA DFS slate. You can always check out Benny on Twitter at BennyR11. Check me out on Twitter at JoshHayesFS. And subscribe to the Rotowire DFS podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. If you want to check out Benny's Finds work, you can find it over at RotoCurve, Rotowire, and as a featured writer of the DraftKings Playbook. And you can also follow me on Twitter at JoshHayesFS. Benicio, welcome to another fine day of fantasy action in the NBA.
Yeah, this is a pretty good slate here. We got 10 games going on. I got to be honest, though. I was looking through some of the games, while I was doing some notes before the show. There's some ugly games out there today. There's not a lot of great spots. Like, I don't think we're going to have a lot of big totals on this, Friday slate. And I think part of the problem, too, is some of the games that could have a big total are probably also going to have a pretty big spread going on with it. Sure. So I'm expecting a few blowouts and a lot of games in like the 200 to 210 range, which isn't bad, but it's also not, it's not screaming fantasy goodness out of any of them. So I think it's a pretty even slate. There's 2 or 3 games I would stay away from, mostly because of the, of chances of a blowout, but the rest of them look like they should be somewhat competitive and, should be decent. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go with it, which, again, is something that I like. I like the bigger slates where there's a lot of different options because I always feel that, I can put together an optimal team and give myself an edge. So I'm definitely going to be playing pretty heavy on Friday.
Yeah, a lot of good options that are available to us on the slate. And you know what, just some teams that we can sort of take one side or no side if you want to avoid some of these, games like the Utah-Memphis, which has got a total 194 and can just be a slow-paced matchup there as well. But we got a lot of good options because the Thursday slate was loaded with all the big boys. You can sort of pick your spots in terms of creating some value in your lineups. And let's go ahead and talk about the value that's available on FanDuel at the point guard position here. Quick disclaimer. Sorry, before we get into all this, a lot of questions coming up about the Rotowire DFS podcast feed. And, we sort of mentioned that on the previous show, how we've moved over onto another server. We've always made the show available on YouTube for you to stream and, download in that format. That's still the case. Obviously, we're hosting live on Google Hangouts right now, which automatically uploads to our YouTube channel. But the simple thing that you need to do in order to just pick back up the feed for those of you who maybe are watching on YouTube and trying to figure out what's going on with your podcast feed, all you have to do simply is just unsubscribe and resubscribe to the podcast. That'll renew everything with all our current podcast servers. I know it's a little bit of a hassle. If you give us until the next couple of days, your feeds will be automatically updated without you doing anything. So if you want to take the, hey, you guys fix it route, we'll take care of that. But it's going to be a few days for us to get back on track. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about point guards for Friday and who you want to book in your lineups.
Yeah, I don't really think I want to spend up here. I'm not really loving the options that you would have to spend up on. You got John Wall at 9,800. So, you need about 50 fantasy points out of him in a matchup with Cleveland. We know that Kyrie is a pretty weak defender, but I have a feeling that Cleveland's going to put a hurt in on Washington in this game, so not really loving Wall. You got Lowry going up against Damian Lillard with that Toronto and Portland game. I'd probably prefer Lowry over Lillard only because Lowry actually plays defense and Lillard doesn't. So in that situation, I'd probably prefer Lowry, but I don't really want to spend 9,100 for him either. I think I'm going to be going down in price a little bit here. Kyrie's a guy that sticks out for me. Paced up game against Washington. He's only 7K over on FanDuel, which I think is just too cheap for him. He's been putting up 30 to 35 fantasy points in, tougher matchups. So for me, Kyrie Irving's probably the one guy that I really, really want to have on my rosters. After that, though, I'm probably looking at some of the cheaper options to round it out. Trying to decide between D'Angelo Williams and Jeff Teague in that matchup against each other. I think I'm going to go with D'Angelo Russell and Jeff Teague in that matchup. I think I'm going to go leaning towards Russell, mostly because in that matchup, there's a good chance that Kobe won't play. We saw Lou Williams get hurt the other night. So if you have no Kobe, no Lou Williams, you're going to get a lot of minutes out of the guards that they have left over. So for only 6K, with the way D'Angelo Russell's been playing lately, I think that he's another guy that I really want to have some exposure to. So D'Angelo Russell and Kyrie Irving are probably my 2 favorite plays. If I have the money to go up and get Lowry, I think I would go up and get Lowry because I think he's going to score more points than those guys. But on a dollar for dollar basis, I think Russell and Irving are the two guys I really want.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense overall. We've seen, Russell sort of elevate his game to another level. So sort of what people expected him coming out of the draft, and now we're finally seeing that production, bear itself out. So I like that call overall. I'm still okay with Shelvin Mack as well, in his potential value. That's been provided at a very cheap price tag. 3,600 is the price. A little bit uneven in terms of the performance against Toronto, but that's Kyle Lowry defense on the road. The matchup isn't particularly exciting against Memphis, but they've been playing a little bit less efficiently defensively with Marcus Stoll back in the lineup. So maybe limit him to GPPs, but anytime you have a chance to take a look at somebody at 100 over minimum price tag that has a shot at 30 minutes, then I think it deserves some sort of consideration there as well. Any other guys that you want to stump for before we move on to shooting guard?
No, Mac that you mentioned was actually the one cheap guy that I would be okay with if I needed him for roster construction. I don't really think you do because I don't think there's enough superstars here that, you need the cheap scrubs to go with the stars and scrubs approach. I think you can make a pretty balanced team with guys basically throughout in like that 5 to 7K range that we usually look at. So other than that, like I said, I really like D'Angelo Russell, and I think Kyrie Irving's just a little bit too cheap. To me, those are the two guys that just stand out. So I'm going to have a lot of exposure with them too.
Yeah, I agree with you there as well. Just I'm okay with maybe at the very top as far as up I would go is Damian Lillard for 9,100 on the road at Toronto, because he has been a fairly consistent threat from outside, and you don't necessarily have to worry about his shot volume or steady production because it's just him and ZJ McCollum offensively. So, if it takes him 28 shots to pay off that price tag, he'll get there. He'll continue to fire away. You just have to, know that going in, that it is a little bit of a road matchup. So I agree with you. Value Town more likely for me to be a resident on Friday than some of the top options on the board. Shooting guard up next. Go ahead and talk about what you want to do on Friday for the two.
I hate to say it, but as long as Gallo's out, I got to keep going back to this Will Barton well. It's burned me the last two games, but he is, the guy that, stands out to me just basically on price. He's below $6,000, has a matchup with Brooklyn, so he's probably going to go up against, like Bojan Bogdanovic defense. So I still think that he's got to be somebody that's in play here on this slate. I'm also looking a little bit at Oladipo, especially if Fournier's out again. Again, they're going up against Phoenix. Phoenix is absolutely horrendous on the defensive end. They've been giving up a ton of points to everybody. Despite the fact that people consider PJ Tucker a plus defender, he really hasn't shown to be so far this year. And he might not even get PJ Tucker. He might even draw some Devin Booker defense, which again is another guy who, not really scared of on that end of the floor. So I like Will Barton at 5,900. I like Oladipo at 6,600. Again, that's the range that I'm kind of looking to stay at in there. Dwayne Wade at 7,500 is one of the guys that you can spend up for. And, Chris Middleton, DeMar DeRozan, those are the options to spend up. Probably like DeRozan the most of those guys if I was going to spend up on anybody. But, again, I think that there's a lot of value in that 6K range with guys like Barton and Oladipo. So that's really where I'm looking at going here in this game.
Yeah, I agree with majority of those points there. I think I'm willing to gamble just a little bit more on some of these spots here. Like for supreme value, I'm okay actually with like Gary Harris, for example, who people, everybody wants, to sort of stick with the Will Barton train, and I'm fine with that. Zach LaVine has been a guy that's getting, those minutes are basically locked in now that they've traded in Kevin Martin. And, he's been playing a little bit of combo role similar to Darren Carlson, a little bit of one, a little bit of, behind Ricky Rubio, a little bit of the two. Playing 38, 41, and 35 minutes has paid off 5.5 times price tag in 3 straight games. So I love trying to get some exposure to Zach LaVine in the sort of second tier pricing for 5,300. And, Joe Johnson, as long as this guy's going to be getting heavy minutes and exposure playing up against Philly for 5,600, you got to take a look at the value there as well. Um, last question for you is: do you feel like Dwayne Wade trustworthy or not trustworthy, given the matchup against Philly? He was in a good spot in the previous game and sort of gave us a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to be rolling him out there. I'm just a little nervous about rolling guys against Philly right now for the same reason why I'm a little nervous about rolling guys against Phoenix. I mean, they're just really, really bad. And they've been getting blown out a little more often lately. And when that stuff kind of happens, the old guys are usually the first ones to sit. And at this point in his career, Dwayne Wade's one of those old guys. So, I could see him sitting in the fourth quarter and Jay Richardson playing 25 minutes in this game or something like that. So, for me, I'm kind of off him. I think that you get more upside from the guys beneath him. I don't really see Wade having like a 45, 50-point fantasy game here and giving you the upside you're going to need to win a tournament at a $7,500 price.
All right, that sounds great. I think for me, the way I want to sort of approach this here is take a look at everybody below 6K, and then tell me why you don't think they can match production against Dwayne Wade. There as well. There's just a list of guys that we can go through, and we've already highlighted most of them there as well. So there's just no reason for you to have to pay to the very top of the tier. The most expensive guy on the slate is Chris Middleton at the shooting guard position that we can take a look at. And you don't necessarily have to pay near 8K for us to get the value that we're looking for when you have the number of options that we mentioned, like the Levines, like the Joe Johnsons, like the Will Bartons, who are going to be a good bet for 30+ minutes with a fairly high usage rate. All right, small forward up next on the slate here. Before we move forward, we have to let all you pod listeners know out there, or maybe you're a streamer, maybe you're watching us right now on YouTube. If you're checking us out, why not check out the information that we have available on Rotowire.com? We got a free 10-day trial available. Rotowire.com/pod is the website for you to get that 10-day free trial. Features include lineup optimizers for MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL, college football, and soccer, up-to-the-minute depth charts, customizable league projections, and draft kits for all the major sports, including NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and NHL. Don't forget to check us out there, rotowire.com/pod. Take advantage of your 10-day free trial. Let them know that Josh and Benny sent you. All right, small forward up next. Let's go ahead and talk about what you're putting down at 3 for today's action.
Yeah, this is a position where I think I'm going to be paying up for at least one guy. I like LeBron up top in his matchup with Washington. We know that Washington's one of the worst teams in the league against small forward. We've been targeting against them with the small forward position all year. LeBron down below 10K. I think this could be one of those games. I'm expecting this to be a high-scoring game. I think it's even going to go over the totals that Vegas is expecting. I could see 225, 230 points out of this game. Because both Washington and Cleveland have been playing paced up. Cleveland's been playing faster since Tyronn Lue came in, and Washington's been playing fast all season. So I don't play LeBron all that often, but, I do think this is a really good spot for him for cash games, and I think he even has upside for GPPs here. Coming down from there, I also really like Carmelo and Giannis. I think those are two of the guys who I'd probably try to use the most. They're a little bit cheaper than LeBron. They're a little below that 9K range there. Giannis especially has been really picking up his play lately. Melo is just a guy who's been a solid scorer. I don't usually like playing guards against Boston. I usually try to play front court players. So even with Jay Crowder, he's not somebody he's not somebody I think has a really good, upside matchup that he's going to shut Carmelo down. Melo's still going to get his shots in there. He's been rebounding and, getting a few more assists this year. So I like Melo. I like Giannis. I like LeBron. And then the mid-tier to me is kind of weak. So I would go down to guys like, you can get Bojan Bogdanovic at $4,000, seeing huge minutes. You also have Hazonia down there if you want to mess with that again. He's been okay. Last game he played great, 30-something fantasy points. I think at the very least, if Fournier's out, he's somebody you got to consider. But again, I didn't like him yesterday. I was perfectly fine not having him yesterday, even though he had a big game. So for me, I think I'd rather go Bojan if I'm trying to save.
I would go Bojan over Hazonia. I've been in the Hazonia camp, and then he set me on fire with my pick there on March 1st. So you owe me, Mario. So maybe I'll play just because the DFS Karma Gods need to reimburse me for 15 minutes of non-action. But I definitely agree with you. Got to go. I feel like we should call him BOGO, like buy one get one GPP lineup free or something like that with Bogdanovich. So BOGO, I'm in. We're talking about 31 plus minutes in two of the past two games, 7.6x and 9.1x against both LA teams, the Clippers and the Lakers. And, people don't realize this too, but the LA Clippers, I believe, in terms of defense efficiency, are number 2 in the NBA. So something to keep in mind when taking a look at that matchup. And so I love Bogey. Maybe we call him Bogey. I don't know. I'm struggling here with the nicknames today. Bogo, Bogey, wherever you want to go with him. For 500 above men's definitely needs to be somebody you give some consideration to there as well. I think you're right on about the LeBron call. You sound like the Dos Equis guy when you were breaking down LeBron, because you're like, I don't always play LeBron, but when I do, I use him against Otto Porter defense, and while I'm drinking a Dos Equis. So, but I think you're 100% right. We know Otto Porter has been an absolute turnstile on defense, and and LeBron's not costing you into the 10K range like he normally does. 9,800 is the price tag for Friday's action, so something you can definitely make take some advantage of at home against Washington. Any other small forwards we need to sprinkle in Baskin-Robbins style before we move forward?
No, I think that's it for me. Like I said, I'm saving at some of the other positions. Small forward's one that I'm actually going to be paying up for. And if you need those cheap guys, you do have the, Hezonyas and the Bogdanoviches down below that are, very viable, cheap $4,000 or less options. So, if you want to pay up at some of the other positions, those are your easy swerves at the bottom. But I do think you're going to get some big games out of the guys like Giannis and Melo and LeBron up top. So that's a spot that I'm going to be looking to spend some money at.
I think you can do one of two things: anchor your lineup at the small forward with the big boys, Giannis and LeBron James, or go complete value town. Even Shabazz Muhammad, he's even a guy in GPPs that's sort of been providing some sneaky value with some like the small forward version of Jamal Crawford, $4,100 price tag, very reasonable. A lot of guys down there in value town that you can make a case for as well. All right, let's talk about the power forward position here for Friday. We've got some interesting things happening here at the power forwards, because it's really like, despite the big void, aside from maybe Paul Millsap, of some big boy names that we want to take into your lineup. But there's guys that I definitely love. We got Aaron Commissioner Gordon. We got, Mercer was the case that we gave me. Miles Turner at 5,300 in a plus matchup against that weak Charlotte front line. How do you separate the value options between, the most expensive player and Millsap?
Yeah, I'm not going to play Millsap here, and it mostly has to do with the fact that, again, that 6 to 7K range is chock full of about 6 guys that I can make a case for. I like Thaddeus Young going up against Denver, high-paced game there. Thad's been playing real well lately. I agree with your Aaron Gordon call. Aaron Gordon's been playing awesome lately, going up against Phoenix, who, horrible on defense, been giving up a ton of points to everybody. A guy that I like has been playing well for me, Jared Sellinger, going up against the New York Knicks. As long as what's the big guy's name? As long as Olynyk stays out, there's a lot of minutes out there for Sellinger, and he had a huge game yesterday. 37 fantasy points on DraftKings, like 34 on FanDuel, and he didn't even play the fourth quarter because they were winning that game by so much. So that could have been a game where he went 45 or 50 fantasy points for you, and probably won you a GPP. As it was, he still returned over 6x value on all the sites. Well, actually, I shouldn't say all the sites. Over 6x value on FanDuel and DraftKings, over 3x value on Fantasy Draft. But, so he got you the upside value that you needed to win a tournament, even without him playing the fourth quarter. So he's another guy that I like there. Marvin Williams had another big game yesterday. Not the greatest matchup for him here against Miles Turner. But I think he's another guy that's a viable option that you can look at. And then, Mercer hasn't really been giving you the big upside lately, but at only 4,700, he's giving you 20 to 25 fantasy points. So he's getting value for you if you need a price saver. So for me, I don't see any reason to go and pay up for Millsap here. Again, I think that 6 to 7K range, you can find a lot of guys with 30 to 35 point fantasy upside, which is 5 to 6x value at their price. So that's probably the range that I'm going to be looking in for my plays on Friday.
All right, I understand what you're saying, and I'm swerve from you here and give you my case for Millsap in this particular matchup. Okay, and it's not because I think you're wrong with the value options. I love all the value options. They're great value for a reason. All the guys that you mentioned here, Marvin Williams, Teletovic, Turner, we can make a case for all those guys. And to me, Aaron Commissioner Gordon is like as safe as can be with cash plays. Price continues to rise to 6,400, but so the production continues to rise along with it. And, juiciest matchup as you possibly get against Phoenix. So I'll probably start a lot of lineups right there. What I want to say about Millsap here is take a look at where we've gone in terms of roster construction. We've made a case for not paying up for point guard, not paying up for shooting guard, and not potentially paying up unless you're going with LeBron at small forward. So unless you know that you're going to be, crushing the center position, 7,900 is very reasonable on a 10-game slate. You could actually, I think, potentially roster a value point guard, LeBron, Paul Millsap, and still feel good about where you want to go at the center position going forward. And I just don't think that, although that you can get like for dollar better value versus what you'll pay for Paul Millsap, I don't think you have too many power forwards with 40-point upside. And we know that the Lakers, they cough it up like it's nobody's business at every single position. I believe they're bottom 5 in DVP at every single spot. So that's why I feel like, at least maybe, you want to limit them to GPPs because that Aaron Gordon is cash safe and $1,500 cheaper. I understand that, and that all makes sense to me. But that's why I'm going to definitely be having some exposure to Paul Millsap there for the Friday slate. Does that make sense to you?
I mean, yeah, I'm not playing him, but if it makes sense to you, it's all good.
This is like just waiting for Josh to be out of breath so we can move on from this point. I've already decided my fate. I mean, he wants to go off the reservation.
Well, I was going to say, I'm a big fan of Millsap. I played him, basically the first 2 months of the season almost every day.
It sounds to me like you and Millsap broke up, and now there's bitter feelings on both ends. Like neither one of them wants to go back to the other person's place and pick up their toothbrush. That's kind of where you guys are at right now. Am I wrong or am I wrong?
I don't know. I mean, when I break up, I just turn around and walk away and don't look back. So he can keep the fucking toothbrush. I mean, see, this is why we can't do the shows at night. I have no filter later on in the day. No, I mean, he can keep the toothbrush for all I care. My whole thing is that, he was a guy that I rolled in cash for, like I said, almost the first 2 months of the season because he was consistent. Now he's a little too up and down for me. I had to break up with him. He's a little too volatile. He gets out of control sometimes. So, like I said, it's it's just not going to work out for us. It's not you, it's me. That's what it is.
It is definitely you. I will say that on this pick here. It's the LA Lakers, bro. All right, Roy Hibbert is a paper bag in the paint. So, all right, if you don't want,
but think about this. There's likely no Lou Williams. There's likely no Kobe Bryant. There's likely no Jordan Clarkson. There's also likely no chance that this game is close. So I don't see Millsap playing big. It's the same reason why I don't like Teague either in this game, because Teague's not in a horrible spot either, and neither is Horford, who we'll talk about in a second when we get to centers. I feel like this game is just going to get real ugly real fast. I'm okay using D'Angelo Russell because they don't have anybody else to play guard. But the fact that they don't have anybody else to play guard also means that there's a good chance this game could get ugly anyway. I mean, it might have gotten ugly anyway if the Lakers were at full strength, but with all the injuries that they have here, I just think that I don't want to pay up for a guy that I'm worried about him playing the fourth quarter.
Okay, when you put it that way, then it makes more sense to me. Okay, yeah. So I could see that overall. I do want some level of exposure because, I always want to attack the Lakers whenever possible. If the blowout happens, then maybe he does, his sort of impression of Curry, and we get the value in 3/4 worth of action. So if the blowout happens, they did a bunch of scoring or a bunch of damage somewhere along the line, and you just hope that your guy got his piece before he gets removed out of the game.
Yeah. I'm probably more okay with him in cash than I am in GPP. So I'm probably the opposite of the way you see it. Okay. I don't see the upside for him in this game. Is my thing.
If the Lakers hang in, bro, he's a crusher. You know what I mean? I think it's a lock for 40 points if the Lakers don't get blown out. And if he doesn't, then you're still in safe territory with the cash games. We can go back and forth about this. Basically, what we're saying is Benny turned and walk away, and I'm here to pick up the pieces on Millsap is basically what it comes down to.
So Millsap's your rebound guy is what you're saying.
He is, and I think he's going to get a double-double in rebounding there. So, yeah, we'll see how it ends up. Feel free to smack me around if I'm wrong tomorrow. You can, I had a bunch of fun with it at your expense. You could do the same to me tomorrow if I'm wrong.
Fair enough.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about the center position. But before we do that, we got to talk to all the business owners here, Benny. If you need a website, why not do it yourself here with Wix.com? No matter what business you're in, Wix.com has something for you. Used by more than 75 million people worldwide. Wix.com makes it easy to get your website live today. You need to get the word out about your business. It all starts with a stunning website. So with hundreds of designer-made, customizable templates to choose from, the drag-and-drop editor, there's no coding needed. You don't need to be a programmer or a designer to create something beautiful. You can do it yourself with Wix.com. Wix.com empowers business owners to create their own professional websites each and every day. So when you're running your own business, you're bound to be too busy to worry about the budgets, the scheduling appointments, or to build a website for your business. And because you're too busy, it has to be easy, and that's where Wix.com comes in. With Wix.com, it's easy and free. Go to Wix.com to create your own website today. The results will be stunning. All right, let's go ahead and talk about your the center position here for the Friday slate. Are we going Brolo? Are we going Whiteside, strong side? We got the big cat on tap here. A lot of nice options to choose from at the center position today.
Yeah, I love Hassan Whiteside. He's going to be the guy that I have on a lot of my rosters, and one of the reasons why I'm saving more at power forward so that I can afford to pay up for him. He's going up against Philly. We know that Philly's a team that gives up a ton of rebounds to centers. Also give up a ton of block shots to centers because Okafor is a little bit undersized for a center on the other side. If Okafor misses this game, then he's basically going up against Nerlens Noel, which again is a good matchup for him. My biggest concern might be that this game turns into a blowout and he sees a few less minutes late in the game, which is why the other guy that I like is actually Brook Lopez going up against Denver. Lopez just such a huge part of that Nets offense. He has one of the highest, I think he has the highest usage rate of any center in the league by a pretty wide margin. He's at like a 29% usage rate. So, he's a guy who's a huge part of that offense. He's going to get some rebounds. It's going to be a high-paced game against Denver. So I'm looking up towards that, those guys up at the top, guys like Whiteside, guys like Brook Lopez. If you are going to roll with a guy like Millsap, or if you're trying to fit in some superstars at some of the other positions who, were guys that we might not have been as high on, I think the chalk value center here is going to be Alex Len again. He's getting a lot of big minutes. He's still only 5,300 over here on FanDuel. He's been putting up 30+ fantasy points for you. I think his projection for Friday, they have him projected here at around 30 fantasy points. So at 5,300, his projection is almost 6x for you. So if you're going to save, I think Alex Len is literally the only guy that you go down to and save that makes any sense for me. But I am, and I may have some shares of him as well. Definitely think he's a viable option in cash if you want to go and upgrade somebody at another position to, maybe a higher scoring guy like a Millsap, or if you want to go up to like a Lowry at point guard from, somebody else who we talked about in the lower range. I think Alex Len is the way you can do that for the cheap guys. But if you're looking for the top overall score at the center position on the day, I think you get that out of either Brook Lopez or Hassan Whiteside. So those are the guys that I'm rolling in my GPP rosters.
Yeah, I like everybody up top here. So, a case can be made everywhere. Hassan Whiteside, juicy super matchup. Brolo against Jokic, I love that. Karl-Anthony Towns against Greg Monroe, another crusher of a matchup. And I think your favorite from the previous day, Alex Len, definitely makes some sense. Producing at a pretty high level versus that, versus the previous 2 weeks ago, where he was sort of just completely stuck into that mix and match range of 14 to 22 minutes. He's been upgraded to 30+ minutes in 3 of the past 4 games there as well, and somebody that we can keep tabs on how he ends up faring for Thursday night's action against Hassan Whiteside and the Miami Heat. So somebody I definitely don't mind getting some exposure to, as long as the minutes and the production stays consistent for him overall. Anybody down there in home run territory that you want to take a swing at before we call it a show?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for me at 5,300, I don't think there's anybody even close to Alex Len. So if you're gonna go cheap, I don't think there's any reason to go cheaper than him, and I don't think there's anybody else around him that's even worth, you know, anywhere near the same amount of upside and safety that he gives you. So if you're gonna go up top, I think you have options. You know, you can go at Karl Anthony Towns. I wouldn't hate if somebody went that way. Who are the other guys I was looking at? You know, maybe a Vucevic you can make a little bit of a case for. But down there in the cheap section, you're basically Alex Len and Mason Plumlee are the two guys that would be on your radar. And for me, Len is just head and shoulders above Plumlee. So, you know, for me in the cheap section, I think you just go down to Alex Len and you don't overthink it.
I totally agree with you there as well. As long as he gets through the last game clear and healthy and looks like he's back ready to roll. All right, that is going to wrap it up for the Rotowire DFS podcast and the show live streaming on Google Hangouts. Don't forget to check us out on the official YouTube channel. Appreciate you all subscribing each and every day. With those subscriber numbers have been steadily climbing. We definitely appreciate that. So make sure you hit that red subscribe button on YouTube. And don't forget, you can always check us out on iTunes and Stitcher on the new updated podcast feed. Don't forget to follow Benny on Twitter at BennyR11. Check me out at Josh Hayes FS. And it's at Rotowire and rotowire.com for all your season-long and DFS fantasy needs. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.